For decades, we have scoured the stars. We haven't just been looking for planets or radio signals. We've been hunting for anomalies, those rare instances where the cosmos refuses to follow its own rules. And now, the James Webb Space Telescope may have uncovered exactly that. What started as the standard monitoring of 3 Atlas, the third interstellar object ever recorded in our solar system, has evolved into something far stranger, darker, and infinitely more significant. Deep in a freezing void beyond Mars, Webb detected something impossible. It wasn't just light, it was artificial light, a glow that behaves like no comet or asteroid on record, a signature that defies the known physics of reflection and refraction. Now, astrophysicists and astronomers face a single question that chills them to the bone. What is 3 Atlas, really? Stay with us as we plunge into the data that has reignited the oldest, most terrifying question of all. Are we alone? 3 Atlas was first identified as a faint speck skirting the edge of the solar system, traveling on a trajectory no local object could sustain. Clearly interstellar, it was born outside the sun's gravitational grip, flung across the galaxy by unknown forces, and is now drifting silently through our neighborhood. Initially, it was dismissed as a cosmic curiosity, much like its predecessors, Oumuamua and Borisov. But even in the earliest images, something felt wrong. Unlike most interstellar visitors, 3 Atlas was unusually bright, and not in a way that made sense. Its magnitude didn't match its estimated size or makeup. It shimmered with an unnatural consistency. Its brightness neither faded as predicted nor flared with signs of outgassing or dust release. Traditional comets brighten in bursts as ice sublimates, but this object remained steady, as if powered from the inside. Telescopes around the world turned to watch, and Webb, with its unmatched ability to pierce the infrared spectrum, was brought in to decode the mystery. What it saw changed everything. Stationed a million miles from Earth at the Lagrange point, the James Webb Space Telescope was built to see the unseen, cutting through star glare to reveal what hides in the shadows. Its observation of 3 Atlas was supposed to clear up the confusion. Instead, it amplified it. The telescope's instruments picked up a centralized thermal emission that didn't correlate with natural sunlight reflection. Typically, a comet shines because the sun's rays bounce off ice and dust. But 3 Atlas displayed an internal heat signature, energy radiating from the core outward. This wasn't scattered light, it was emitted light. Thermal mapping exposed a pattern that followed no natural distribution curve. It pulsed faintly, irregularly, and most disturbingly in cycles. That subtle, repeating rhythm suggested design rather than randomness. Scientists at NASA and the European Space Agency floated exotic theories: radioactive decay, alien isotopes, subsurface friction. But as fresh data arrived, those theories crumbled. The only consistent explanation remaining was the one nobody wanted to put in writing. This object might be powered. As data from Webb, Hubble, and ground-based observatories accumulated, a profile of 3 Atlas began to form, and it looked nothing like a celestial body. Its trajectory was too precise to be chaotic, as if it were selecting its path, making subtle adjustments through gravity wells. Its rotation was unnaturally stable, a tumbling motion that defied standard inertial drift. Even when passing near solar radiation, it lacked a cometary tail, suggesting a shell or casing protecting it from the heat. Then came the most controversial finding. The albedo, or surface reflectivity, was measured to be nearly perfect in certain areas, approaching that of polished metal. Not dust, not ice, not rock metal. The implications sent a shockwave through the astronomical community. If it was metallic, structured, and emitting energy, we were no longer looking at a natural object. We were looking at technology. Suddenly, words like probe, beacon, craft, and artifact were being whispered in hallways. The notion that this could be an alien spacecraft was no longer restricted to conspiracy forums. It was now circulating quietly in institutional emails behind encrypted firewalls. Perhaps the most damning evidence wasn't the trajectory, the thermal emissions, or the strange metallic signature. It was the light itself. Photometric analysis revealed something chilling. The light from 3 Atlas was focused in a narrow spectral band. In other words, this wasn't a broad, natural reflection of sunlight, but a controlled emission of specific wavelengths. This is exactly how we utilize LED arrays, spacecraft signal beacons, and laser communication systems. Furthermore, this band included frequencies frequently used in Earth-based guidance and communication systems. Not only that, but the light intensity seemed to react subtly to solar radiation, as though an onboard system was adjusting in real time. It flickered not randomly, but with a strange, intermittent pulse. Astronomers ran the data through known signal models. The results were inconclusive, but not meaningless. Some argued the pulses looked like binary sequences. Others suggested a rotating power source. But the conclusion was undeniable. This was not a passive object. It was doing something deliberate, and we were watching it live. As data poured in, a team of astrophysicists from Harvard and MIT ran a deep signal analysis on the electromagnetic emissions. At first glance, the frequencies appeared to be random noise scattered across the spectrum. But when they applied Fourier transforms to isolate cyclical patterns, something emerged. Buried within the static, like a whisper beneath the chaos, was a structured, repeating pulse too precise to be natural. It wasn't a standard binary code, nor a modulation typical of human technology, but it carried the unmistakable fingerprint of intentional encoding. Some speculated it was a beacon, a repeating broadcast meant for receivers not of this earth. Others theorized it was telemetry, a constant stream of data being sent back to wherever this object originated. The unsettling part was this. Whatever the message was, it hadn't changed since Webb first detected it. It was as if 3 Atlas wasn't trying to speak to us, but to someone else, and perhaps that someone had already heard it. News of the discovery spread rapidly through the highest tiers of scientific and defense institutions. A confidential report, circulated internally at NASA and later leaked to an unnamed journalist, revealed that top officials were already coordinating with global space agencies to assess if 3 Atlas posed a threat. Some scientists argued it was benign, an ancient probe, perhaps centuries old, on a pre-programmed route through the stars. Others were less optimistic. They raised questions no one could answer. If it is transmitting, who is receiving? If it emits light, does it also have propulsion? If it is here by design, why now? The report mentioned the remote possibility that 3 Atlas was not just passing through, but observing, tracking electromagnetic fields, planetary alignments, or even advanced civilizations. This possibility ignited panic behind the scenes because if this object isn't alone, then something else might be on the way. Something that sent it. Further investigation into the luminosity of 3 Atlas led to a revolutionary hypothesis. The object wasn't just emitting energy, it was harvesting it. The fluctuations in the object's light output relative to its distance from the sun, combined with the lack of chemical reactions, supported the idea that it might utilize a photonic absorption system or solar collection array embedded beneath its surface. A group of theorists postulated that the dust clouds surrounding the object could serve a dual purpose: camouflage to mask its artificial structure and a medium to absorb solar radiation. If true, this suggests 3 Atlas is a self-sustaining craft designed to travel indefinitely through deep space, refueling as it moves from star to star. This concept aligns perfectly with theoretical models of interstellar probes, machines that remain dormant for centuries, activating only when they reach a star system worth investigating. And if our solar system triggered that activation, then the message has been received. As international space agencies scrambled for answers, one truth became increasingly clear: we are not ready. Despite decades of speculation about extraterrestrial contact, our political, scientific, and philosophical systems are woefully unequipped to process what 3 Atlas might represent. No official statements were made, but internal documents leaked from agencies in Japan, France, and Brazil all hinted at similar conclusions. This object might not just be an anomaly, but a first encounter unfolding in slow motion. Unlike what Hollywood taught us, there was no landing, no sudden appearance in the sky, no immediate answers, only data, only light, only silence. Webb continues to observe the object daily. Yet, every answer it delivers seems to spawn two more questions. If this is contact, it is contact on their terms, not ours. Quiet, distant, unsettling. And that may be the most terrifying aspect of all, because what we are witnessing may not be an invitation. It may be surveillance, and we may have already been seen. Just when astronomers believed 3 Atlas had settled into a predictable trajectory, the unexpected happened. Its luminosity spiked dramatically. This wasn't a gradual increase due to proximity to the sun. It was a sudden flare captured in real time by the James Webb Telescope and confirmed by ground-based observatories. The object's brightness surged by nearly 40% in under 2 minutes, then stabilized at a new, elevated level. No natural explanation fit the data. There was no impact event, no solar-wind interaction, no fragmentary disintegration. It was as if someone or something had flipped a switch. The flare wasn't just visible. It carried a change in thermal signature, almost as if systems had powered on. Theorists proposed the chilling possibility that the object had entered an awakened phase, triggered either by our observations or its proximity to our star. And if this flare was an intentional act, it was meant to be seen. Shortly after this anomalous brightening, orbital calculations detected something else. 3 Atlas was no longer following its projected path precisely. It had shifted subtly but measurably. Gravity alone couldn't account for the alteration. Even solar radiation pressure, often used to explain small course changes in lightweight objects, didn't add up. This shift was deliberate. Even more unsettling was where the new trajectory pointed, deeper into the solar system, with an adjusted inclination bringing it closer to the plane of Earth's orbit. The object was no longer just passing through. It had, in effect, changed lanes. Some scientists urged restraint, calling it a gravitational anomaly. But others saw the shift as a maneuver, a subtle course correction that no rock or comet had ever made. And if 3 Atlas was capable of even limited navigation or propulsion, it meant we were no longer observing a relic. We were watching a vessel in motion, a vessel with intent. As the object passed within range of the spectroscopic instruments aboard Webb and Hubble, scientists began to detect elements that raised more red flags. They found traces of highly reflective alloys, rare earth elements, and most shockingly, spectral absorption lines resembling compounds never before cataloged in our periodic table. These were not materials one finds in a frozen chunk of interstellar rock. They were engineered, or at the very least synthesized under conditions unknown to nature. One spectral profile matched no known chemical process, but closely resembled theoretical compounds proposed in quantum material labs. Substances thought to exist only under intense magnetic fields or quantum confinement. This implied either unfathomable age, suggesting the object predates human civilization by millennia, or highly advanced manufacture by civilization far beyond our own. The nature of the materials spoke louder than any signal. Even if we couldn't decode the message, the messenger itself was unnatural. The object's brightness surged by nearly 40% in under 2 minutes, then stabilized at a new, elevated level. No natural explanation fit the data. There was no impact event, no solar wind interaction, no fragmentary disintegration. It was as if someone or something had flipped a switch. The flare wasn't just visible. It carried a change in thermal signature, almost as if systems had powered on. Theorists proposed the chilling possibility that the object had entered an awakened phase, triggered either by our observations or its proximity to our star. And if this flare was an intentional act, it was meant to be seen. Shortly after this anomalous brightening, orbital calculations detected something else. 3 Atlas was no longer following its projected path precisely. It had shifted, subtly but measurably. Gravity alone couldn't account for the alteration. Even solar radiation pressure, often used to explain small coarse changes in lightweight objects, didn't add up. This shift was deliberate. Even more unsettling was where the new trajectory pointed, deeper into the solar system, with an adjusted inclination bringing it closer to the plane of Earth's orbit. The object was no longer just passing through. It had, in effect, changed lanes. Some scientists urged restraint, calling it a gravitational anomaly. But others saw the shift as a maneuver, a subtle course correction that no rock or comet had ever made. And if 3 Atlas was capable of even limited navigation or propulsion, it meant we were no longer observing a relic. We were watching a vessel in motion, a vessel with intent. As the object passed within range of the spectroscopic instruments aboard Webb and Hubble, scientists began to detect elements that raised more red flags. They found traces of highly reflective alloys, rare earth elements, and most shockingly, spectral absorption lines resembling compounds never before cataloged in our periodic table. These were not materials one finds in a frozen chunk of interstellar rock. They were engineered, or at the very least synthesized under conditions unknown to nature. One spectral profile matched known chemical process, but closely resembled theoretical compounds proposed in quantum material labs, substances thought to exist only under intense magnetic fields or quantum confinement. This implied either unfathomable age, suggesting the object predates human civilization by millennia, or highly advanced manufacture by civilization far beyond our own. The nature of the materials spoke louder than any signal. Even if we couldn't decode the message, the messenger itself was unnatural. With evidence mounting toward a non-natural origin, governments and agencies began to react, not publicly, but with unmistakable urgency. Encryption levels on observatory networks were increased. Research teams were quietly reassigned. A sudden, unexplained surge in satellite recalibrations was noted across multiple continents. Spacefaring nations initiated discrete contingency discussions behind closed doors. One leaked document from an international defense consortium suggested that 3 Atlas might not be a lone visitor, but a scout. The object's unusual structure, stable rotation, and apparent ability to remain operational across interstellar distances indicated a design consistent with long-term observation probes. But if it was scouting, what was it looking for? And more disturbingly, what comes next? Across universities, military command centers, and observatories, a terrifying consensus was forming. We were no longer alone in the universe, and first contact might not be a conversation, but an evaluation. As speculation reached a boiling point, a bold team at the SETI Institute decided to take the risk no one else would. They transmitted a focused radio pulse directly toward the projected location of 3 Atlas. The message contained the periodic table, universal mathematical constants, and basic visual representations of humanity. It was meant to be a cosmic handshake, a cautious hello. Days passed, then a week. No response. But just when the experiment was about to be archived as another unanswered call into the dark, a monitoring station in Chile registered something strange. A narrow-band return pulse. It was off-frequency and distorted, but unmistakably timed to mirror the original message. It wasn't a reply in language, nor was it an echo. It was a ping, a return signal with just enough variance to imply it wasn't a passive reflection. It had been processed. It had been sent back. But what shook the SETI team most wasn't the signal itself. It was the timing. The response came exactly 72 hours after transmission, to the second. It meant something had not only received our message, but it had also calculated the delay and answered deliberately. Following the detection of the return ping, observatories around the globe began experiencing technical anomalies. Webb's infrared instruments showed erratic thermal mapping for the first time since launch. Hubble's gyroscopic sensors registered microfluctuations despite a stable orientation. Ground-based telescopes experienced what were initially dismissed as software glitches, misaligned star charts, frozen data streams, and inexplicable pixel distortions. precisely when focused on 3 Atlas. But these glitches weren't random. They occurred in synchronized windows, as if coordinated, as if someone or something didn't want us looking too closely. A theory emerged from a Black Ops think tank buried deep within the European Space Agency. The object wasn't just emitting signals, it was jamming us. It was interfering selectively. The implications were staggering. A passive visitor doesn't hide its identity. A scout does. If the object was actively managing what we could see, and when we could see it, then we weren't watching it. We were being allowed to. And then, silence. Within days of the signal event and the malfunctions, updates from Webb were delayed, restricted, and eventually rerouted. Public logs became inaccessible. The European Space Agency released a vague statement regarding instrument recalibration. NASA simply stopped commenting. Even reputable journals that had been covering 3 Atlas closely began retracting stories or publishing neutral summaries devoid of detail. The astrophysics community was split. Some believed agencies were working to validate the discovery before going public. Others suspected something far darker, that the truth had already been confirmed and was now being contained. The few remaining independent observatories began releasing raw data to the public, but this was quickly drowned out by a flood of misinformation. What was once a global scientific mystery had become a strategic asset. And history has shown us what happens when governments declare a discovery classified. Truth dies in silence. In a last-ditch effort to understand what they were observing, a coalition of mathematicians and astronomers turned to probability theory and pattern recognition. They were no longer looking for communication. They were looking for proof of intent. And that is when they discovered the most terrifying pattern of all. When plotted against planetary positions, the object's path through the solar system mirrored a Fibonacci arc, an ancient spiral of proportional beauty found throughout nature, and coincidentally, in many Earth-based communication protocols. Furthermore, the timing of its course corrections, the light flares, and even the ping response correlated with prime number sequences. The odds of this occurring naturally are astronomically low. These patterns were chosen. It meant that 3 Atlas wasn't just flying through the solar system. It was navigating with mathematical precision, as if following a schedule or a map. A few theorists whispered the unthinkable. This might not be an interstellar probe. It might be an interstellar message, not made of symbols or sound, but of behavior. And we had just decoded the first word. As the dust of confusion begins to settle, one truth remains impossible to ignore. 3 Atlas was never just a rock. From the unnatural light it emitted to the signal it returned, from the rare materials to the calculated change in trajectory. Every piece of this enigma points to a single, uncomfortable conclusion. We have not been alone for a very long time. And perhaps we were never meant to know. The James Webb Telescope, built to peer into the birth of galaxies, may have instead caught a glimpse of something designed to look back. Something ancient, deliberate, and watching. Not from the safety of a distant star system, but from the threshold of our own celestial backyard. And yet, silence reigns. The data is withheld. The agencies refuse to speak. The world, it seems, has been deemed not ready. But we saw the light. We tracked the path. And now we ask the question that terrifies even the most rational minds. What happens next? Was 3 Atlas simply passing through, cataloging our little world before continuing its voyage? Or was it merely the first of many? A probe leading the way for something greater, something waiting for a signal to move forward? In the end, it may not matter whether 3 Atlas was a machine or something else entirely. What matters is that it came, it saw, and it responded. And now, somewhere in the cold, endless dark, something may be turning its attention toward the blue planet that blinked first. The countdown has perhaps already begun, and the universe once again reminds us, we are not the center. We are the observed. I'd love to hear what you think about this, so drop a comment below. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please share this video and subscribe to help the channel grow. Every bit of support counts.